And we're live. PKA.
The Denver airport is fucking weird. There's an odd aesthetic. It's fucking really gargoyles at baggage claim. What the fuck is up with that?
What's the... Wait. You're asking that everyone in the city is high. And you're wondering why the airport looks weird?
Yeah, but because the airport was built decades ago, way before they were all chill with pot.
Yeah.
Well, way before it was legalized, but it's not like they legalized pot in Denver and suddenly people were like, I've heard a lot about this. Can we give it a try? Like Denver has been like the home of mushrooms forever.
Hey, where are mushrooms?
Dude, I talked to that's funny you say that because just 2 days ago, I was talking to my cousin who obviously lives here, and I was like, dude, we want to find like a really cool, like semi-difficult hiking trail to take. And my cousin was like, oh, dude, I know a guy who knows the best areas in Colorado Springs. And this motherfucker took us like a guided tour through the most difficult hike I've ever done. And it turns out that he shows up with his dog and in a tie-dye shirt. And the whole time he's talking about how he's majored in like mycology, like mushroom studies. And so every time he sees a mushroom, he's like going over to the side being like, oh, dude, we could like fry this up, or like, oh, here's one of the ones that we could like cut up and like trip on. It was like, I kind of wanted someone to just tell me where to go. more than the whole like drug lecture.
Well, the same way
on a bunch of shrooms, man. Damn, you have to, bro. It's like, yeah, but do we go left or right here?
Now in LA, because you could just get pot delivered to you. It's it's the same as like ordering a pizza, and
dude, it's fucking
the idea of like what's gone is having to talk to some guy trying to sell you pot for an hour. Like what's gone from that is like where you have to discuss like what the real meaning of this album is.
You know what's gone from that also is having to pretend that you're friends with your drug dealer.
Yep.
It's like, oh man, yeah, I guess I'd love to watch an episode of something with you, man. Hey, you want to smoke some of your stuff together? No.
So it was always the worst.
No, I want to go home.
I always had the worst drug dealers. Oh, they were the worst. That one guy, I'd go to his house and we'd be down in his basement where he had all of his plants, and all these degenerates would be hanging around to get free weed, pretending like they're his friends. And I just want to buy and leave. And they're just all such losers. They're just the worst kinds of people. That's where I had that conversation where we're out back, like smoking a cigarette. And I'm like, someone brought up methamphetamine, like randomly. And I was like, hey, meth, not even once. Am I right? And they went, well, I've tried it a few times. And I was like, fuck. And the other guy goes, yeah, I like to get a little crispy every now and then. And I was just like,
a little crispy.
Well, it's my cue to fucking run away. So
you need a spiel, Kyle.
I'm more into
you need to hit your drug dealer and be like, I need 1 ounce, Alaskan Purple Dragon Slayer. Faster is better.
You would expect that to be a thing. But
you can't do it that same way.
Treat him like a barber.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kyle. Sorry.
He would be like, I tell him what I wanted, and he'd be like, all right, let me go bag it up. And it'd take him like 20 minutes while he had a whole conversation with me, telling me stories, depressing stories. He never had bags. He always had to like make these bootleg bags out of like plastic wrap and a soldering gun. And like I'm not even kidding.
Oh shit. Did he ever use the cellophane off of a cigarette container and then solder that
I
closed?
would buy in such quantities that wouldn't work, but I have purchased weed where it was in the cellophane of a cigarette, like the cellophane that comes off of a packet of cigarettes, and then they put it in there, roll it, and then melt the top, and it's just like, this is some ghetto shit, boys.
They just give it to him in like a Kroger shopping bag.
Yeah, I buy at least an ounce at a time. Like if I'm buying.
I remember I was in a college drought of needing it or wanting some pot when I was like a sophomore in college, and it was like, who am I going to go to? And someone was like, hey, this guy, he kind of is weird, but he'll do. And I was like, all right. So I went over there and I was going to buy some, and this happened like twice. And this guy would like pillory you with offers of playing Street Fighter. the entire time. You were just trying to buy drugs and go home. And so I would have to play him in Street Fighter in 2 or 3 fights and get absolutely manhandled by him because I didn't know the buttons. I didn't know how to play Street Fighter. But every time you go over there, you sit down, and before he goes to grab the goods, he wants to fucking play Street Fighter. And so you play a couple games of Street Fighter with him, you get railroaded, and you just have to be like, all right, man, well, can I just have the weed now? Like,
that's what
can
they
you
should have
just
done.
go get that for me?
As anti-drug commercials, fuck this whole like, oh, and then you play with your gun and accidentally shoot yourself. Oh, your dog talks. They should have just been like, look at the fucking degenerate you're gonna have to talk to for the next 2 hours.
Yeah.
Like, if you buy drugs, you're gonna have to go to this guy's house. Like, that's the best anti-drug commercial you could possibly do.
That is a real good one. It's like, it would just be a photo of a white guy with dreadlocks and a tie-dye shirt and black sweatpants on. It would be, do you want to talk to him for 2 hours? Then don't do drugs.
They were the most depressing parts of my week when I would go see this guy. And he was like a friend of a friend of a friend. Like he was so far disconnected from like my little social group. He was just such. All right. Usually when you call somebody a loser, what you mean is like they're bad at life and they like through things they've done to themselves. This guy had loserdom thrust upon him though, like through a series of unfortunate events. I've told the story before, but like there was this one like 9-month to 12-month period where he kept being seriously injured and mangled. Like while just trying to work a job and provide for a family. That's what had driven him to selling marijuana and driving a long haul truck. Was he just kept getting injured severely through no real fault of his own. Like he was in this construction job.
KFC.
He worked construction and they were putting like a tin roof on a house, and he was on top, and there's a guy on the bottom pushing this big sheet of tin toward him. The guy on the bottom was all fucked up on meth and like got too aggressive, and the guy is holding a sheet of tin at the top, and the guy at the bottom shoves it so hard that he cuts a bunch of the tendons in my boy's hand and like cripples his hand. They've got to go in and like reattach tendons. Well, now he can't use his right hand for like months as a construction worker.
He doesn't get like $1 million for that.
No, if you look up how much people like that get from the government on injuries, it's depressing. It's like, oh, you lose an eye? Yeah, we'll throw you $50K.
Like a company? Or?
But what about after?
No, I feel like Steve is like, what?
I need my eye.
You hire an attorney. You don't get it from the government. You get it from the company. You know.
This is like Billy Bob's construction company. Like
all the TV attorneys salivate over cases like that.
Well,
like no.
So now he's got a crippled right hand that's going to take months to recover. Well, he's like, hey, I'm pretty good with my left. Let's keep fucking working. I'm a man. I provide for my family. So they're like, he's at a different construction job in like a sub basement where they're hammering rebar into like mostly dry concrete. Like it's wet enough that you can hammer rebar into it, but it's dry enough that that's still an effort. And I don't know if a chip of steel came off the hammer or the rebar, but hammers are this like really tempered steel. And when a chip comes off of a hammer, it has this shocking amount of velocity to it because they're not supposed to chip. So if they have chipped, it's deceptively extreme in nature. And so a chip of hardened steel comes off this hammer and hits him in the chest, a small piece, like really small. And he's like, oh, that hurt. And his buddy goes, what? And looks over at him. He's like, dude, what happened? He's like, what do you mean? He's like, have you been shot? And he looks down, and his chest is covered in blood, and it's running down his leg now because this thing has gone so deeply into his chest that the ER thinks it's a gunshot wound. And they think he's lying about a gunshot wound to get out of some sort of trouble. They're like, you can tell us if this is gang related or something. Like you can say it was an accident. We just need to know what kind of firearm it was. And he's like, I was swinging a hammer at work. And they're like, sure you were. So finally, I don't even think they got the chip out. I don't think they could get it out. So they just patch him back up. And so now he's got this chip of steel in a not so healthy spot inside his chest now. He's like, well, my troubles have to be behind me. You know, I need something. I need a recreational vehicle. I'd love to just have some fun in my spare time while I'm on workman's compensation. I'd like to get a four-wheeler, an ATV. So he goes to this guy's house to buy a used ATV on the cheap. And he's in the guy's backyard. The sun's going down. It's getting pretty dark. And he's got one hand, his bad hand, operating the throttle. Rum, rum, rum. And his left hand, he's sort of got like swaying by his side, hanging loosely. Unbeknownst to him, someone has taken the cover off of the chain of the ATV. And it's a manual. So the chain is spinning back there until you hit the clutch and put her in gear. So it's just spinning. His hand goes into the chain and gets drug into the sprocket. It cuts off one finger. It cuts the tip off another, and it mangles the third. So now his left hand is crippled, his right hand is crippled, and his chest is all bandaged up. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to sell some weed. I'm just going to sell some weed. Can't nobody hurt me if I'm in my basement watering my weed plants. Well,
did he grow it?
He grew it. Yeah,
how's he even pulling the trigger on the spritzer bottle?
I'll get the electric spritzer. And
the electric spritzer.
Nothing bad can happen to me as long as I'm here. I'll drive my big rig. I'll provide for my wife and child. So I've been going to him for a few months now, and I feel awful for him. So I always buy a little extra. Like I pay him well. Like he's like, yeah, it's $2.90 for an ounce. And I'm like, here's $300. You know, I'm the good guy. Here's your $10 tip or whatever. But I'll try to I had these long, awful conversations with him about how awful his life is. And he's always giving me discounts on stuff and asking my advice on various aspects of his life. Well, one time he wasn't there, but his wife was. And I went to the door and I'm like, hey, Bill told me to come by. He said I could get some, and I'm not sure how in the know she is about his whole weed industry. So I thought I could get a little pot from him, and she's like, how much you want? And I'm like, ounce and a half. Yeah, call it 375. Let's do 400. She's like, whatever. She comes back, big ass bag of weed. So I already knew that she was kind of a shitty person. She just seemed a little rude, or maybe she was annoyed, didn't want to be a pot salesman. I can understand that for sure too. But I'm a nice guy. I'm not showing up all weird. I find out she's been cheating on him the whole time while he's gone in his fucking big rig. The reason she was annoyed with me is because she had a dude showing up pretty soon, and she needed all the witnesses out of there because his weed sales were cramping her style. Because she's only got so much time, because she's got to send her kid to her parents' house. She's got to arrange this boyfriend to come over while her husband is away and hide the boyfriend from his weed clientele. Friends, in quotation marks. And
they used to have a better marriage, but her big thing was getting fingered. And
it was the most depressing shit ever. He lost the house. He lost her. She took
his fingers.
He lost the truck, everything.
He lost the truck?
He lost it all. He was making payments on it, like most of those guys are. They don't own those trucks outright.
Losing the truck is a big deal. Like it's their job, it's their house, it's their
dude. He took the cab off of it and lived in it by the end.
I was
the ultimate cucking.
I was on the road with a comic who was like super into pot, and he flew in for the gig, and so he had to like find some, and it's pretty easy at a show. You just talk about it on stage, and then people come up to you afterward. And so that's what he did. And then, we had adjoining rooms at the hotel, and he gets back. It's like 2 a.m. and he ever come back, and I'm like, where the fuck were you? He's like, I just one of these folks' house and got some pot. I was like, it was 3 hours ago. He's like, yeah. It turned out they wanted to talk, and it was just like this 60-year-old couple who just wanted to talk to him about comedy, and like he couldn't get out of there. And I was like, this is the most scared straight program I've ever heard.
Yeah.
The idea that you might end up in some like, it's not even about going, oh, you had to go to a dangerous neighborhood to get your drugs. Like, no, you had to go to some suburban people and just listen to them for 3 fucking hours. Like, that's
even if free pot, I imagine, sucks, right? Like, here's a scenario I'm inventing in my head. Ooh, Steve talks about pot on stage. Steve likes pot. Steve, you want to hang out with me and my 3 buddies? We're going to smoke up. You probably think, ooh, that sounds fun. Then me and my 3 buddies, who have no personality to offer to this situation, say, Steve, private performance, please. Be funny. Now you're on stage again. Earn your tokes.
Yeah,
that is
it's funny you mentioned that, Woody.
what happens.